Punch in a little bit later.
Check, check, check.
We're talking about Jimmy and Dr. Dre.
Jimmy Iovine is the levitator. Dre is the innovator.
I need something a little bit more impressive.
Bruce taught me a work ethic. I had to work harder than the next guy just to do as well as the next guy. And to do better than the next guy, I had to kill.
I knew that I had to be a success at something. A friend of mine put together 2 turntables. I started doing this thing. I wanted to be able to get in there and rock.
I think Rattle and Hum was Jimmy's last stand. I think we broke him.
I didn't want to see a studio. I was done. So I said, maybe I can start a record company. I gotta find great producers, and I produced them.
This was that do or die album. Put my body into this record. I'm playing it for everybody. For some reason, everybody's turning me down.
Nobody wanted to deal with this gangster rap thing. They were afraid to deal with the people.
The East Coast ain't got no love for Dr. Dre and Snoop Dogg.
Interscope crossed the line of decency.
All I remember is that Dre came in to play us the Chronic. I said, who recorded this for you? He said, me. I said, wow, this guy will define Interscope.
Jimmy was like, I want to get you guys on the cover of the Rolling Stones magazine. You guys are like Mick and Keith. I'm like, who the fuck is Mick and Keith, nigga? Fuck the Rolling Stones magazine, nigga. I want to be on the Source magazine cover. That is hip-hop supremacy. That motherfucker blew up. Man, I ain't never had that many white people come to me in my whole life.
Okay, so fast forward to, holy shit, this is Jimmy Iovine. Holy shit, Dr. Dre just walked in.
He pops that tape, and I'm blown the fuck away.
I'm pissing myself now thinking about it.
Jimmy Iovine, he was walking up the beach, and I told him about my lawyer approaching me about
a sneaker company that wants you to endorse something.
Out of the blue, he's like, Dre, man, fuck sneakers.
No, you don't sell sneakers, you sell
all kinds of different speakers.
Yeah, you know what? We could call it Beats.
Everything that I've done in my career, I've always been underestimated.
Fear's a powerful thing. It's got a lot of firepower. It was the beginning of making fear a tailwind instead of a headwind.
Alan Hughes, right here.
Hello, everyone.
Sure, thank you for being here.
Did you guys put my cognac in here?
We did. He's gonna be wasted by the end of this interview. It only takes 20 minutes, apparently. Thanks for being here, man. I'm a huge fan of your work going back to your first film. I love Menace to Society.
Thank you so much.
And let's talk about The Defiant Ones. This is a documentary about these two men and their sort of separate paths and how they came together. What made you want to tell their story?
Well, I was originally going to do a documentary on Dr. Dre's life. And I pitched it to HBO, and they were in. And then they said, Jimmy just walked out here with a Interscope documentary on Interscope Records, and I went, I'll call you right back. It was a call, actually. I said, I'll call you right back. And I just thought, wow, wouldn't it be amazing to do like a two-hander? Because Beats it still is massive, but it had just erupted. And I was like, what's the story behind this partnership? And I know how long they've been partners before that, you know, with the Interscope Records and Death Row Records and Aftermath. So I thought that would be more, and I know Jimmy, and I know Dre for over 25 years, so I know what a character he is, meaning Jimmy.
Well, the interesting thing about Jimmy's story is that it hasn't really been told, right? Mm-hmm. With Dre, on the other hand, we have Straight Outta Compton. I mean, Jimmy is a man behind the scenes who's crafting everything, so his story rarely gets told publicly. Dre's story gets told publicly all the time, and I think one of the great things you do with Dre's story is you very narrowly skirt a lot of the stories we've already seen in Straight Outta Compton and everywhere else, and you try to find the blind spots that we haven't really hit yet. Was that difficult to do, considering that he's a very well-known public figure?
Yeah, with Dre, I mean, I think there's a mysterious quality that's always been there with him, so to try to find him between the lines, to try to find the man, you know, the young man, the older man, the artist, the producer, that was a challenge with Dre. But we've grown up with Dre, you know, like we've seen him reinvent himself time and time again, so we're familiar with Dre. So I looked at this kind of like the way I looked at when I saw Goodfellas. Going into Goodfellas, we knew who Robert De Niro was. He was cool as fuck, and we were in. And then all of a sudden, this guy, Joe Pesci, we never heard of before, really. He's just so colorful and so dynamic. I knew that about Jimmy. But I also knew Jimmy was the Wizard of Oz. He stayed behind the curtain his whole career. He was the ultimate collaborator, and he was the ultimate champion of artists, especially Dre. And so, but what you don't know is whether that'll translate to the screen. And so that was exciting to see that he actually did translate.
Now, you actually almost opened the entire series with a clip from Goodfellas. I know it's not necessarily in reference to how you're using it now, but I know you're a huge Scorsese fan and probably a massive Goodfellas fan. I don't think anyone can't be a massive Goodfellas fan. What was it like to be able to use a clip from that movie? I'd imagine it was really exciting to be able to throw that in there.
It was, obviously, you get really excited and you go, are they gonna let us use it though? Are they gonna clear it, you know? And so to put that in the movie was the ultimate honor because, I mean, that movie was a game changer for me, just as much as Scarface or as much as Goodfellas. I'm sorry, The Godfather. All these typical ones, they become typical in our, you know, reference points, but Goodfellas was like, wow, you know. So I used that as a way, even in telling the story and looking at the differences between the two guys, you know. I'm talking about the Pesci comparison. With Jimmy. Pesci's a character in that movie. And what you find with character...
Relentless.
He is relentless. And Jimmy's relentless. Yeah. And if you, in my career, in my life, not just my career, even when I was a child, I always was by a liquor store, if there was a wino or whoever it was, a drug dealer, if they had charisma or their characters, the stories would come right behind that. So that you know you're going to have a great story when you're in the midst of characters, you know?
No, I don't.
Great characters.
I'm not sure, but is this the first time you've worked in a documentary? Made a documentary?
Did one in '99 called American Pimp.
Oh, that's right. Excuse me. I'm so sorry. What was it like crafting something like this? I mean, you have incredible cinema knowledge of cinema, and
not like yours though.
That's not true. Right here, I threw one esoteric movie at him backstage to get him to like me and sing my praises, and it worked.
Did.
But so, did you ever find it difficult to sort of bring what you loved about movies and about cinema to the documentary? Because it's not as much sort of camera work as you get to do. You look at Menace to Society, and what I love about that movie and Dead Presidents is how beautiful the Steadicam work is, and all the other camera work that you do in that film. That is very referential to a De Palma or a Scorsese. Do you find it difficult to sort of bring those influences into the
That's the challenge, because I'd rather watch a documentary than watch a fiction film nowadays. I'm just a big fan of the medium. But I find that most people look at documentaries like they're eating their vegetables. You know, like, oh, I'm gonna learn, but I gotta eat my veggies. I want to be smart. And I come from cinema, you know, and cinema, you know, there's a visceral nature to it. And there's an urgency sometimes, you know, and at its best. And so my approach with the doc was like, I don't want people to be bored. It's got to be entertaining. It's got to be informative, but it's got to be cinema. That's the only thing I know how to do. You know?
Is that why you use, and I'm going to say he had to tell me what it was backstage because I couldn't remember, why you use the Untouchables theme in the opening for each episode to sort of pay reference to or pay homage to cinema and try to engage people in that
Straight up. I mean, there's several reasons why I used Ennio Morricone in the later part 4 he comes up again, but for the credit sequence, it is the Untouchables, the gangster film that Brian De Palma made about. You can help me here.
Capone and
Al Capone. Yeah.
Al
What am I doing? I'm spacing.
And I can't remember Kevin Costner's character's name in that movie. The investigator. What is it?
Elliot Ness.
Elliot Ness.
Elliot Ness. There we go. But that track or that composition it feels like someone's getting ready to get shot in the ass. Right? And so I said, if I use that, one, it just has an urgency to it. It feels like some criminal shit's getting ready to happen. But also, that man started his career as a DJ. And that man is a producer of great hip-hop. And great hip-hop always repurposed other music and did mashups and stuff like that. So the nature of this film, and sonically, I was very aware, like, let's take theme, like there's a great score piece from Blade Runner in the middle of the Source Awards 1995 when Suge Knight and the East Coast, West Coast thing started. And it's a very obscure cue from Blade Runner. And it's just a way of DJing the movie and doing what a hip hop producer would do, but trying to find a elegant way not to offend the original as well, you know?
You've also got a great composer on the film too. You've got Atticus Ross, who's worked with Trent Reznor a lot on the scores, and their music, Atticus and Trent's music, is so unique to them, and I think especially when it comes to sort of a montage that has to happen. I don't think anybody writes montage music for movies like they do. Can you talk about working with them?
Well, I had a pleasure of before they worked together, Atticus and his wife Claudia and his brother Leo worked with me on a television show about 15 years ago called Touching Evil. That was their first time composing something. This is before even Trent was composing. And it had the same quality, though. And I don't know how to describe that, but it's atmospheric. It's just unique. It's not traditional in any way, but it is traditional how it grabs your emotions, you know, and sometimes your throat, you know. And it's the first time I ever worked with a composer that, you know, it sounds like I feel or like I think. And then him and Trent started working together as well. And Trent's the sonic wonder of our time. It's Dre and Trent, to me, they're just sonic wonders. And Trent was already doing beautiful compositions on his albums. And then when they got together in Social Network, I don't know, I never heard anything like that. The movie's basically a deposition. It's a talking head movie.
But they create that sense of urgency that you talk about. They create an incredible sense of urgency with their music.
Yep.
So let's go back, because we've seen a lot of the...
This is kind of scary, by the way. They had these guys over my shoulder like this. I've been with them for like 3 years. It's time to bring them down over here.
Have they seen the entire series? What are their thoughts on it?
They have. Well, you know, it's interesting. We just finished, I don't know, he has to look at a new, referring to Dre, part 4. So, you know, it's funny, I'm still working on it, and they have seen the film, but sometimes I go back and revise a lot of scenes, or I've never worked on something like this before. There's so many drafts, so many different versions of scenes, and there's a lot of nuance in there. So yeah, they've seen it, and it's been a journey in that, you know. Really? Yeah.
Have they had thoughts on it? Like, was it the kind of was it a collaboration with them that you had to sort of to be able to do the film?
You definitely got to collaborate with them because they're still active. You know, they don't have final cut. It's not their vision as far as the film or what's being said in the film. But you want them to approve of the film. You know, you want them to feel like, you know, because they're revealing so much. So yeah,
they're also friends of yours.
And they're friends as well. I don't want to not be friends after this, especially with, I don't know which one I would be more afraid of if I wasn't friends.
There's also no reason to take them down, to make a film that takes them down. They're like,
there isn't.
Not bad guys.
And they, you know, they started off, when you see the opening of the film, you've seen it, the way it starts with, it's kind of it's a very embarrassing moment. So we set the tone early that it's not a fluff piece, it's not a vanity piece, and it's not a tribute either. It's a you know, like, it's entertaining, but we were after the truth, and we're after honesty and you know, absurdity and uniqueness and humor, and there's tragedy, there's everything, and it's like life. So they were with that, you know. But I didn't want to surprise them where you just release it and there's a scene where they're completely exposed that they didn't know about. You know, I wanted them to be aware of everything before it came out. You know,
Dre has always been a fairly, you know, closely guarded public person, in the sense where he's not really public about anything, and even just before Straight Outta Compton and during Straight Outta Compton, there was the Dee Barnes story that, like, he didn't want to talk about, the movie didn't want to talk about, and you get him to open up about that in this film. Was that difficult, getting him to talk about that?
No, with the Dee Barnes situation and Dre, the odd thing is, it blew up again during Straight Outta Compton, and I had already filmed him a year prior, dealing with it and apologizing and really getting into it. And then it blew up again, and just
please release the movie.
Yeah, it was just that's what the surreal nature of making a documentary, though. You know, it's not scripted, and you can't just rush it out, and you're not doing it for that. Dre going into this wanted to deal with that. He wanted to really deal with it, you know. And he asked when we were done shooting too. He's like, "I'd like to say more on that." So I went back and we did more on that. So. That you can't do a documentary and not deal with the big, you know, elephant in the room, or elephants in the room. With both of them are 800-pound gorillas.
And you interviewed Dee Barnes about it. I love the footage of her interview with the guys from NWA and then with Cube. How has she dealt with it, in the present? She doesn't really talk that much about where they are now.
How she dealt with it in the present? Yeah. She's in a good place, and she talks about that in the film because she's not a victim, and she's an activist. She's a very strong-minded, witty, funny, fun, and serious at the same time woman, and I thought it was very important because she was involved, she was around in the culture at the time. She was like a little sister to the guys, NWA. So it was equally as important to have her be a part of the film. I didn't know whether she would agree to it or not. So we had lunch. It went well, and her spirits are just. Like I said, she's an activist by nature. So she had something to say, and as you see in the film. But she had already processed all that. She got into a place of peace. She talked about forgiveness, and so where they're at personally, that's up to them. But where she's at is in such a strong place, and he's come a long way in that because that was a serious thing, it was hanging over his head all these years, and for her, it hangs over her head. People, they bring it up, even to this day with her.
It's unfortunately what she's most well known for,
Yeah.
So those unfortunate incidents that she dealt with it, she probably wanted to move on, but that's what everybody knows her for.
That's what I was most proud of her, and my production is looking at that and going, you know what? She's not this victim and this footnote, and she was able to move past that, and we were able to move past that, she and I, in this film.
Well, I think as someone who read some of the articles around the time that Straight Outta Compton was coming out and people were writing about this, I learned more from your doc about Dee Barnes than any of those articles or any of those people who tried to say that, who tried to put her up on a pedestal and say Dee Barnes' story isn't being told. And it's like, no, you tell her story and you show how much of a part of this community she was and what her show was like. And none of those articles or people who came to defend her and slam Dre really did that.
Well, the number one thing that I learned along the way, and I won't name names because there are things that were happening in our culture along the way where when it comes to women and women's issues, and my mother is a feminist activist, and as a child, I marched with Gloria Steinem and did the whole thing. There's a difference between apologizing about something or saying, hey, and giving someone, letting them tell their story. With Dee Barnes, she had to, why can't we hear from her? She's a part of this culture. And it's not just about that incident either. I had an incident with Tupac, who was a dear friend of mine. And it's a pretty famous incident, got violent. But that was like one blip in an entire relationship. And everyone focuses on that violent moment we had,
I really don't want to focus on that violent moment,
well, we won't,
but you just brought it up, so I have to ask, what happened? Because I don't know this story about Tupac. Can you briefly tell it, or do you not want to get into it? It's okay if you don't understand.
Because you know why? To get into it would take longer than we have right now, but it really would. But before he passed, fortunately, we came to terms with it. But my point is that we were dear friends, and then there was one moment of violence that took about 5 minutes, and that overshadowed the friendship in the press to this day.
Yeah, but that became the essence of your relationship.
That became what everyone talks about.
Yeah. Going back and looking at NWA and how the culture in mass reacted to them is so interesting in terms of where we are now and where we were then. Because it wasn't just most of the time when we talk about NWA and the people who were scared of them and were sort of activating against them, we talk about sort of like white politicians and scared white people, but it wasn't just them. They were a really controversial group for their time, for everybody. But one of my favorite moments, and I laughed out loud in your film, is watching Tabitha Soren say the name of their album out loud. Like,
Niggas for Life.
Yeah, which is like
the new album, Niggas for Life.
It's so good. It's so good. But what's so weird about that moment is she says it without blushing, and I don't think an anchor could do that now, which is so fascinating in that moment. But talk about, what it was like researching NWA at that time and living through that, because they were really controversial for everybody. Even in the black community, people weren't really sure how to respond to them.
Well, and I was 16 I was 15 when Eazy-E's first album came out. So Eazy came first. Eazy was the first West Coast rock star. He was really from the streets. Everyone's seen the film, I'm sure. He was a dope dealer. And he was a character. He was another interesting individual. So that album came out first. And then Straight Outta Compton came out when I was 16. And it just was, we all wanted to be dope dealers. I swear to God, that's what happened. You know,
there was a reason for its controversy.
There is a reason for it. Like, what happened is it's like any great film when you watch Scarface or whatever, you take on that when you walk. I don't remember who in this audience, when there used to be Kung Fu films, we would watch them, you go into the bathroom and you start just doing moves right away, you know. So music is the Police put punk rock music out of business. That's how powerful that song is, right? But like, I got this rock, I want to sell you. Now, like, it got sexy to wear Dickies. Like, that was sexy.
Right.
So that was probably not so good part of and pop and edgy way that it affected kids where they wanted to be like.
Because I saw that movie when I was a kid, so I wasn't really aware of the controversy at all. If there was controversy, I rented it from the video store and I was like, cool, this is awesome. Menace, yeah. I was probably like, and now when I watch it, like I said at the beginning of this interview, I see it as something much more stylistic and beautifully made. As an 8-year-old, I was just like, this is violent and funny. But what was it like? I mean,
what's really interesting? I've said to Ice Cube in person. I said, you ghost wrote Menace to Society, right. And he literally did, because there was tracks from the NWA records, and there were tracks from his first solo album, and there are skits on his first solo album that literally are in Menace, like reenactments from like the burger stand scene where the guy gets jacked at the burger stand. That was in an Ice Cube skit on America's Most Wanted album, you know? So yeah, the records impacted Menace big time. The lexicon, the street stuff, that was outside of our door, my brother and I, but also the records taught us how to synthesize that stuff, you know, and make it and bring an urgency, much like the cinema we grew up on. Again, like Scarface.
Controversial when it was released? Was it a controversial film?
It was in that, you know,
what do you like about it?
Everything.
But like.
Well, you know what I've learned recently. Let me paint a picture here. Try to paint a picture. One of my favorite films of all, but there's a lot of corny moments.
Oh, it's a campy movie. Yeah.
But when he's on stage, there's not one corny moment.
Darling Nikki in that movie is like one of the greatest pieces of cinema ever filmed.
So I had to embrace the fact that there's a lot of corny moments in Menace, but when it was game time, I guess there was enough in it that people appreciated, you know? Well, I don't even know if I'm answering your question.
Society and see, like, do drugs, bad things happen. The main character will die at the end. Whereas, like, with NWA, you still had Eazy-E for a while just being like, no, look at how successful I am now.
He was a character. Again, it was entertainment, pure entertainment, and he was a button pusher for black people because, listen, they know this. They know these realities, you know? We made this film for white people. They don't know why these kids are doing what they're doing. And I think the controversial part of the film was, at that time, when certain factions and gangs would show up and there'd be shootouts, people were losing their lives back then at certain urban films would come out. And that was controversial, and people telling you have blood in your hands because you released a film like that, and the film had the message that was the opposite. At that time, film companies did not know how to handle urban films or roll them out. And the security wasn't, it was dangerous to go to a theater in the hood and watch a film like that at the time, you know?
Wow, that's unbelievable. I didn't realize that. Going back to the Defiant Ones in early years, can you talk about finding that? The stuff with Stevie Nicks, the stuff with Bruce Springsteen. Like, I feel like a lot of the Dre stuff with NWA, like, I've seen that footage as a person who loves NWA and will watch whatever. Iovine story hasn't really been told. So watching, like, Bruce in the studio with him doing Born to Run and Nicks and Tom Petty, that stuff is so cool. Can you talk about digging that up? Where did you find it?
Years. Most of them they stayed in contact with. So when you're talking about Bruce Springsteen, immediately Bruce turned over all the film in his vaults from making those records. So we had to go dig for Jimmy because they had made documentaries on Bruce's records of that footage, but you know, it wasn't about Jimmy, so you didn't see Jimmy.
It wasn't about the guy splicing tape in the background.
Exactly. Yeah. So we had to go pull those reels and find Jimmy. Where's Waldo, basically. And
no offense to Jimmy Iovine, like, but can we talk about how much like shit he looks like in those early days? Emaciated, any picture that you have of him, someone's talking, he's like this. Was that just it? Was he just like totally exhausted from working?
He was. He was excessively working 24 hours a day because, you know, he had gotten fired so much. He
talk about this. The overall arc of the film, or I mean, of their lives, is one that starts as like independent musicians and obsessed with artistry. And I think Dre is still there in many ways. But now into this, I mean, the footage of them inside of a Chrysler car because they're like sponsored by Chrysler and they're sort of figuring out exactly how to. This arc that starts with NWA and like, you know, mixing tape for Bruce Springsteen, something so for a money-making machine that they are a part of because the sort of system has dictated that any success has to sort of move that towards that direction. I guess
security. You know, you start thinking about like. You still love what you do, you still love the craft and the art, but you don't want to worry about your family.
Yeah, especially if the system's taking our health care away too,
exactly.
right?
Exactly. Really. Truly. You know, at the end of the day, you want to make sure there's enough money to eat, you know, health care for your family and education at the very minimum. But as an artist, you're constantly, when you're young, you don't think about shit like that. You know, as you get older, you start thinking about peace of mind. And people talk about it, we talk about in the film in the 70s, that would be looked at as like selling out, whether you had a sponsor or, you know, aligned yourself with a corporation. And now it's just smart. You know, it's not a sellout move if you're still maintaining your artistic integrity, but it's smart business, it's smart for your family, it's smart for your future, your security. And when you're in Iraq, when you're rocking out in your 20s, you're not thinking about any of that. You know, come 30, you start going, oh shit, you know, how am I gonna everything, you know?
Especially having dealt with Jerry Heller as your manager in your early years.
And Dre that's a great, you know, because Dre had been done over a few times financially because all he did was go to the studio and focus on that artist and that board. And he wasn't worried about his finances. And after 3 times of getting screwed over, and this man and him getting together, and finally someone saying, hey, you know, let's take care of that, and you'll never have to worry about that with me. You know, let's get you your own label. And Dre learning to become a businessman as well. But he's still a pure artist. He does enough business to where he's not distracted from his art completely. But you know what I mean? It's you have to find that balance, or you can't just be all artist, unfortunately.
Let's get some questions from the audience. Who has a question? Right here.
Hi, Alan. Thank you so much for being here. After working with Jimmy and Dr. Dre, 2 of the most self-defiant men in music culture, do you think it's the duty of the artist to challenge the establishment and for the listeners to hold them accountable for their lyrical content?
That's a great question. I think it's the duty of an artist to be who they are and say what they feel. And even if it's reckless, they shouldn't even be thinking about whether it's reckless or not. And then release it. And then it's our duty to react. Right? Because we've gotten to an era right now where everyone's so hyper PC, if that's the right way to put it, you know, on both sides, you know, well, not so much on the other side this time, and I'm not on either side. So let me just say, because
you lost me. Which sides are we talking about right now?
Well, you know, the political climate, you know, left or right, Republican, Democrat, liberal, independent, you know, the Republican now, you're like, I don't know if there's any PC over there happening. It used to be very PC. Now the liberal side's hyper PC on every issue. And I think we've taken that too far. You know what I mean? Does that answer the question?
So that's what was so interesting and caused me to laugh out loud when Tabitha Soren said the name of the album out loud.
If that happened today?
A white anchor could never do that.
If she did that today, she'd be fired the next day.
Yeah, and I'm not advocating for a white anchor to be able to do that. It's just a sort of...
We have to change with the times, but you know, it's like when Eminem first came out, all that, you know, homophobia
stuff. So much of Eminem stuff would not be...
It would not fly today. Nope. And I think there's something wrong with that as well. We always, as a culture, take things too far first, and then we find our balance, you know. So we're in that part right now where the left is taking it way too far. We're too hypersensitive about everything. This Bill Maher thing that just happened a few weeks ago, like, I got mixed feelings about it. I'm not like black or white about it, literally. You know? But I have made like, no, I don't think Bill should be fired for saying that. That guy threw it was low-hanging fruit. Yeah. Right? Oh my God, I shouldn't even say that, right? You know what I mean? Like, you're like, he's a comedian, and it was too easy. Yeah. Was it wrong for Bill in particular? Yeah. But should he be fired? No. Don't get rid of Bill. We only have that one voice out there in premium cable. You know, let's not, whatever, you know, bite our nose to spite our face, whatever the fuck the expression is.
And it was great. And it was great TV to watch him get beat up for an hour.
Oh man, I like the Ice Cube beatdown. The Ice Cube beatdown. Anyone want to see that?
Oh, it was wonderful.
The Michael Dyson, whatever, I can do without that one. But the Ice Cube one, oh.
I love the Ice Cube one because it was after the Dyson one, and then from Cube it went to the other woman who was on the panel, and they just kept cutting back to Mar, who was clearly done with it by this point, and was like, I felt like he had suffered enough, and it was just like this every
So it was one of my favorite. I love Bill Maher. I obsessively watched that show. I've seen every single episode, but that was one of my favorites because he clearly thought it was going to be over quick. It's like, nah, you're not fucking with this black shit. Ain't nothing over quick, motherfucker.
I was not happy he said that, but I was happy he said it in front of Ben Sass, who is like a conservative Republican senator who didn't do anything about it at the time and just turned away, and I was like, okay, good.
There's a great learning opportunity. What do they call it on the show? It's a learning opportunity for us, or whatever the fuck they refer to it as.
Like that.
Yeah.
Next question.
I'm sorry we got so far off of Bill Maher.
That's okay. Next question, right here.
Hello, thank you for being here.
Oh, thank you.
What advice would you give to people that's trying to make documentaries like this, and which artists or entertainers would you like to work with, like Dr. Dre, that you haven't worked with before?
What was the first part of the question?
What advice would you give to people with trying to make documentaries like this?
Wow, buckle your seatbelt up. There's no script. It's very emotionally taxing. It's not like a job where you can put it down and go home on the weekend and relax.
Is making Hollywood movies like that as well, feature films?
No, it's a lot easier to make a feature film than to make a doc.
Really?
A lot easier. First of all, you get to take the weekend off. You get to take, there's a script, there's a schedule, there's a structure, there's a system. With a documentary, you don't know anything, but like I know kind of what I want to say about him or what he's saying, and I kind of know where I want to go, but then I started this film in 2013, really. Started shooting in 2014, 4 weeks before they made the Apple, I didn't even know about the Apple deal. And then this Facebook posting with Tyrese leaks out. And my documentary was done.
Terry's such a goof.
Yeah, like for a week it was done. Like not only we thought Apple was going to pull the deal, I hadn't heard back from Jimmy. So you never know what's going to happen with a documentary. So just buckle your seatbelt up. That's my advice about the doc part. But as far as artists who I want to work with, oh shit, that's a great question.
You ever hear that great story about
all of those people out there?
You ever hear that great story about Terry Zwigoff making Crumb with Robert Crumb, and he kept a gun under his pillow every night because he thought Crumb was going to quit the documentary the whole time?
That's what I'm talking about.
That's what with Jimmy not calling you back. You have that feeling like, I guess my film is done.
He went black for a week. I'm sorry. Again.
This is a learning opportunity, Al.
Teaching me about how I should deal with these things and what I can and can't say.
Before I let you go, I'm curious. Are you planning? Are there any plans to make a
phallic black thing in your hand too? Anyway, go ahead.
To make another feature film, a narrative film?
Say again?
Are there any plans
I'm still distracted by this.
to make another feature film, a narrative film?
Absolutely, yeah. Always be a feature film maker by heart, you know. But there's nothing. Well, I can't reveal because now you say anything, then someone goes and buys the book or goes and does the movie. But yeah, always. I always want to make features, but not every year. Not like I used to. You know, I would rather do a television series, do another documentary, do a special, do a comedy. You know, something. Features are, you know what the climate is now. It's like if something's not flying and blowing up, it's very difficult to get something done, and I'm not interested in flying and blowing up in fantastical shit, you know.
Right. Or like going out and like having to raise the money yourself and beg people for spare change
all
to help
that,
make
you
your
know,
movie.
you don't want to be Orson Welles in the later part of his career. You don't want to be that guy. Yeah.
Just like bloated and trying to sell wine.
Yeah, we'll serve no wine before it's time. Give me the check now. Get the fuck out of here.
Well, sir, I gotta let you go. It's been a pleasure talking to you. The Defiant Ones premieres July 9th on HBO, and then it's a 4-night event, right? So the 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th, and 13th, right?
I want to say one thing before we
Did
go.
I get
Can I
that
say
right, though?
you got that right? He's good. This guy's good.
See me staring at the poster
You know
while I
that-
was doing it.
The boringest night of the week is Tuesday night for me, and Dre says the same thing. Part 3 is like a feature length, and I refer to it as Apocalypse Now. They're all very special and interesting and dynamic. But Tuesday night, when you're at your borders, I don't know what day that is, 9th, 10th, 11th, you're going to want to see that one because I put a lot of Easter eggs in that one.
Oh, nice. I'm looking forward to it. It's like I told you, I've only seen the first 2, so I will watch the 3rd one tonight.
It's a boring night Tuesday, isn't it?
Well, tonight's Monday, but I got the screener, so.
There he goes.
Alan Hughes, everybody.
Thank
Alan,
you so much.
so much.
Thank you all.